take up too much time here, but I'm going to allow Bryce and Chris to introduce yourselves, starting with you, Bryce.
Yeah, great. My name is Bryce Ryan. I'm the owner of a pool company here in Scottsdale, Arizona. We're currently servicing about 500 service accounts. And then, I've definitely grown by acquisition. I've made several purchases. I've sold routes along the way. And I'm excited to be talking with all of you to see, how we can help you improve your businesses as well.
Nice. And I'm Chris Webb. I'm the general manager of National Pool Route Sales. So we're national, pretty much the OG of creating this market for selling and buying pool routes. I'm based in Florida. I'm actually a Florida real estate broker and business broker, and we help people out to make that connection of getting great people into the industry and helping out people in the industry to find some new sources of revenue.
And Chris, you have a great perspective. I'll just add one more thing here. I'm glad you're joining us because in a lot of cases, you sell routes to people who are not in the pool business.
A lot of times,
which brings an interesting perspective that we'll cover here in a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about buying routes. We're going to talk about selling routes. We're going to show you some tools that we've created to help you do your due diligence and make sure that you are getting a return on your investment. Bryce is going to share some lessons that he's learned the hard way. Then we'll have a Q&A and tackle those questions that you submit through the Q&A box down there at the bottom of your screen. If you are an existing Skimmer customer, we're also going to show you some really cool new features we're working on. Just a little sneak peek that will be coming very, very soon. So before we dive in, I'm going to launch a quick poll here just to get a gauge. 2 questions. Are you currently a Skimmer customer? And how much are you planning to grow your customer base? My apologies for the grammatical error there. How much are you planning to grow your customer base in the next year? I'll give you a few more seconds to answer.
Kind of fun to watch these results live, watching how quickly they change there.
It's also great to see how many of you have really aggressive growth plans as well. We'll do a couple more seconds here. If you're just joining us, we just launched a poll. So it looks like we have quite a few Skimmer subscribers here, but we have some folks who aren't, and that's okay. That'll help us as we present some of these things to you. It looks like 35% of you-ish, and this number is fluctuating as I speak, are planning to grow somewhere between 10 to 30%. But some of you, about half of you, want to grow even more, between 30 and 50% or more. So that's great. I'm glad you're here. All right, I'm going to close this poll. Thank you for your responses. If you are just joining, you can use the Q&A box at the bottom, and you'll hear me say this again, but we will also send all of the resources and the slides and the recording of this presentation to you tomorrow. And with that, we will get going. So why are we doing this webinar? We at Skimmer have quite a few customers. We've got nearly 30,000 users on our platform today. And we have a lot of customers who frequently buy and sell routes. This is just looking over the past year at the number of customers who have sold their route at Skimmer. And you can see there at Q3 2022, kind of tail end of the pandemic, the blitz, not as many people were selling. But as we look into 2022, Q4 and 2023, we're seeing pool routes change hands more frequently. So we wanted to bring you this presentation to help guide you whether you're on the buying end or the selling end.
Right. And I don't even know if that reflects people that sold their entire company. It may not even include the folks that have just sold part of their route, which happens quite a bit. So those numbers I believe would be quite higher.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Correct.
This is people who sold their company, and yeah.
All right, Bryce, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, definitely. Just to dive on in, the acquiring routes can definitely be intimidating and confusing. A lot of pros, myself included, have been burned by buying routes. I think that a lot of times when you buy partial routes, you hear people saying that they're selling all their bad accounts. So you can definitely run into that sometimes. But let's get real and let's talk about whether if it's even right for you. Um, some of the things that you should always look at, you should really think about before you even consider growth by acquisition. First of all, you have to have the money. It's not just about the money to make the purchase, but you have to look at the increasing cost of maintaining those pools as well. The reality, you should plan on those customers being slow to pay initially. I've had experience where when you first make a purchase, it can take as long as 2 months for that money to be reliably coming in how you expect from your existing customer base. And so you really need to make sure you have enough money to not only make this purchase, but also to sustain the business for a period of a few months while you're waiting to sort out the cash flow issues.
Right.
And then are you
And
you
to jump in on that is that not to say that everyone will be short paying, and we'll get to it. The transition period just takes a little bit to transition for Mrs. Smith to figure out that, oh yeah, I got to send my payment to a new person. So a good number of people go with it, but Bryce is right. There's going to be some that are just going to be a little slow on the uptake.
Yeah, exactly. The second thing is, are you being realistic about your time to ROI or your return on investment? When you make those purchases, you have to, kind of look at realistic numbers. We do have a calculator out for you guys that we'll talk about coming up pretty soon to help you determine what that ROI number might be. But you just want to make sure that you're having kind of realistic goals. I talk to people all the time who, they're only looking at the revenue that the new acquisition is going to bring them. They're not looking at the profit. So they think that the revenue that they'll make from this acquisition, they'll make their money back much faster than they will actually make their money back when they're looking at the bottom line, the money that's actually going to flow through to them. You want to make sure that you have the infrastructure in place to support the growth. That was, something that we learned the hard way once we acquired 180 service stops all at once. And my office was just like completely slammed with all the calls, lots of questions that you're going to have, especially initially when you make a purchase like that. So you want to make sure that you have the people in place and trained before you go and do something like that. Otherwise, you'll definitely have a headache. If some of the staff is going to be remaining in place, that definitely helps you too. Something to consider. Another one, make sure you haven't made another acquisition in the last 90 days. And that reason is, if you are moving too quickly on these things, you start to get confused about who your customers were, what their special needs are, and you start to really put a strain on yourself. So I recommend giving yourself at least 90 days to figure out what's going to happen with those customers, if they're all going to stay with you, be happy with your service before you start looking at another one. And then, of course, making sure that acquisition works with your long-term goals. When I talk about this, I'm specifically, for myself, I made an acquisition because it was such a good deal, but it was way outside of my service area. And, in my mind, I was thinking, hey, this will just be I'll operate it like a second company. But what it really did was just put a strain on my entire system, and it was really difficult for us, and it wasn't compatible with my long-term goals of having a larger business that's in a tight area. So just making sure that the new acquisition works with your long-term goals, and not just looking at something in the sense of, hey, this is a good deal, let's jump on it, let's make this growth. if you had anything to add, Chris.
Right. And so I mean, you framed it up nicely, is that it has to fit if you're an existing business, that this needs to fit into my existing structure, my existing logistics of getting it done. Uh, but then also matches where I really want to be, what I really want to do. Like Bryce was saying, well, I really want to grow, so I'll buy this other route. But that growth didn't really match my strategic intent, which is to stay tight and limit the amount that I drive around. Other folks, and you are where it's like, no, I like having different markets. I want to be able to establish myself in these different markets, and then grow organically within that market. So I have these big operating zones, which works for a lot of companies, and it's a real way to grow from one, we'll call it a hot spot, but one concentration of good pools, good rates, good whatever, good, well, labor pool, and to the next hot spot of good labor and opportunity. And I think manpower, I think we can all agree manpower is probably the one constraint that everyone's wrestling with the most, um, currently, and has been for the past 18, 24 months, where I hear a lot from my sellers, like I can't take care of these pools because I can't get someone to go take care of these pools. So that's where they turn to me and saying, I need to trim my route to meet my what I can get done. And so we end up selling smaller routes, or pieces of a route, so that someone can work with them themselves, so that they can then find good help and then start their growth in a smart way.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, just to look at the flip side, a lot of these are kind of the inverse, but if the routes are not in your service area, don't buy them. It's just going to put a strain on you. Obviously, like Chris was just saying, there's definitely instances where that might be okay, if you're prepared for that. But definitely don't just make purchases based on, you feel like it's a good deal. If it doesn't match your long-term plan, or if you don't have the financial cushion to be able to, maintain those pools for, like I was suggesting, at least 60 days, you shouldn't, grow by acquisition if you can't enforce a contract or a guarantee with the seller. If there's no way for you to ensure that what you're getting is what you're paying for, essentially, and there's no way for you to prove that. If you're already struggling with the admin load, don't add a big pile of admin work to yourself. And then also, if you don't have clear procedures to onboard your new staff, if you're not prepared to grow rapidly, then don't grow rapidly, is essentially what we're trying to say.
Right. And not that, and even these are listed as reasons not to grow. They're actually great warning signs of saying, get these items in order if you are going to grow. And from the bottom up, the clear procedures with your staff. It's a great kick in the shorts for people to have procedures of your own, so that, because I know companies that don't hire from the pool industry for techs if they can help it. Because they'd rather bring in a tech and show them how we do it our way. Because I want these pools cared for in this certain way. And I don't need bad habits coming from somewhere else. So if you have procedures and you have, that built into all your techs, by absorbing new techs and bringing them on, you can show them the way, so that these pools, because there's a transition where you have to maintain a smooth transition of these homeowners, so they don't see a big difference. It's a key to making these things go well. But eventually you need to move these homeowners to your style of pool care. But then the admin work, it's just having your admin locked down. How do I respond to customer calls? How quickly do I do it? How do I utilize Skimmer, for goodness sakes, for communicating with these homeowners? And how do I integrate that into this next process? And then, of course, like we talked about, the long-term goals, rather than the service area, of course, is just, does it match my logistics? Can I keep up with it? It's, I think that, the Texas people and the guys in the Florida Panhandle, they can get wrapped up into long drives, of I commit to taking care of this house, that is on, the one side of my route is a good 2 hour drive. And I'm committed to having to tell a customer, I can't make it to your house today. There's an emergency, but I physically cannot drive there. It's a bad place to be. So it's better to have preparations for it, a way to work around that.
Yeah, great point. And something else just to expand on what Chris was saying, which is a little out of place here, but I want to say it anyways, is that a lot of the things that he's suggesting will feel really silly when you're small before you make that acquisition, like building all these processes and things when it's just you in the office. You don't think you need it, but you're not building the business for you today. You're building it for after your acquisition when you've grown, and other people will need these processes. So even though it feels silly to do it now, you really do need to do it
Right.
now. Yep. Some best practices before you make a purchase. Do your due diligence. Uh, take some time taking a look at this company, making sure that they're reputable. Maybe even take the time to visit some of the customer homes, making sure that they're not, like I said before, just giving you all their bad pools, so to speak. I always say take over billing right away. I've definitely talked to a lot of companies in the past that they've done transitions where they're say, we are going to make payments to it, but we're going to do billing. The reality is that they're not going to be as intense about making sure those customers are paying on time because they don't receive that money. So you want to make sure that you're taking over the accountability for it right away. Always have a guarantee. And when we talk about a guarantee for this, that's something to do with if the accounts don't remain in service for reasons that are not, poor service related, like if the customers sell their home or they were planning to cancel service anyway, things like that had nothing to do with the quality of service that you were providing as a new purchaser. You should have some sort of guarantee to help prevent that.
Right.
Definitely. Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, no, go ahead, please.
Okay. Yeah, have clear practices and goals in place beforehand. That's the same thing we were just talking about on the last slide, having those processes in place before you need them. And then just really take a look at the amount of money that you're going to spend and, and compare it to your marketing efforts and decide if that's which one would generate more business. And this comes into play when we talk about the next one, the acquisition should scale. So if you're purchasing something small like 5 pools, the value on a per pool basis is going to be much lower than if you were to purchase a larger group of pools. And the reason for that is just because the ad spend to acquire, 5 pools for my service business in a month like August, we might spend $1,000 and get 20 pools for a month on our advertising. So the price per pool will be much lower for us for 5 pools than for 50 because I can pick them up in my ads in 1 month, no problem. But 50 pools would be a lot more difficult. It would take several years to acquire that with just that ad spend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of our deals, I agree with most all these, is that's how we structure our deals, is to meet and talk to the sellers, talk over the pools. There's reasons not to that that you may not be able to ride around or route because you're on other people's properties that you're not allowed to be on, which is a definite thing. But and then the billing to take it over, right away, we differ a little bit. Sometimes there's a little bit of room there where the process makes sense that maybe the first time through the seller takes care of the billing and turns over the payments, or that the announcement or that kind of handling happens after training or midway through the training period, the introduction period, just to give people time to get acclimated, get things done before receiving all the customer communication and, hey, how you doing? Where are you from? Oh yeah, you're from Poughkeepsie. I'm from Poughkeepsie. And I was, you're sitting there having conversations about meet and greets when you need to be out there training. But the guarantees is part. A guarantee is part of every deal.
We'll talk about transitions.
Sounds like Nikki's having some Wi-Fi issues, but
Yeah. Someone kicked the cord out.
Yeah,
But
we could touch on that a little bit later. It
yeah,
sounds like,
sure.
but yeah, to talk about some of the tools, we did build in a diligence checklist and acquisition ROI calculator, the return on investment. The diligence the checklist is just talking about adding service locations, looking at the service area, making sure that they're all adding up correctly and that they are inside your existing area or where you're planning to expand. The finding out what the average pricing is, making sure that it's kind of in that market range or it's at least going to be profitable pricing for you. Um, Chris and I were talking about this yesterday about the asking, or excuse me, the average pricing about who should raise prices. There's definitely pros and cons to being the seller to raise the price or the buyer to raise the price. But just kind of leveraging that with the additional risk that you take whenever you raise prices. Um, Talking about the asking price, what they want for the route. Either if they're going to be talking about an EBITDA, the you know, EBITDA formula, or if it's a multiple of revenue. When we talked about that the other day too, Chris, you mentioned that EBITDA usually only comes into play with really larger businesses.
Right.
But that's definitely something that might come up if you're making a large acquisition. Looking at the date of the last price increase, it's important. I've definitely acquired pools in the past that have never received a price increase, and they had the same price since like the 90s, 10 years at the same price. And that's a real life example that I acquired pools that with like a base price of around $75 to $80 when the market was almost 50% higher than that. So having those conversations with customers when you're doing huge price increases for them can definitely be complicated. Making sure that you understand the customer's base form of payment. So this is kind of talking about, like, are they paying like checks, cash, but also make sure you're looking at when they're used to paying, like at the beginning of the month, the end of the month, different things like that that'll have a pretty big impact on your cash flow. And the more unified you can make your business, the better. You don't want to complicate things by having some customers that have different due dates. It's going to make it so you have to do billing more often and more complicated. Also looking at the payment history and the billing. Are these customers good customers? Are they at paying their bills? You don't want to have a lot of receivables, waiting for 90 plus days. Do they have an existing service agreement in place? And then also comparing the service agreement to yours, do they line up? And then also are techs included? We'll kind of expand on that and say, what employees are coming with this too, and are they good employees? Doing your own interviewing process and making sure they're going to fit in with your culture, because it can definitely hurt you if you take on employees and turn them over quickly if they don't fit your culture. So you definitely want to consider that.
Right. And I'm seeing that more and more often that the buyers, if there's a tech out there servicing the route or service these accounts, that the buyer, the person making the acquisition, overwhelmingly wants to keep that tech out there servicing the accounts. It adds a nice amount of consistency to the customers, so that they're not as disturbed by the changeover. But also it's good for the sellers to know, like, but that I'm not putting a tech out of work. It's not like, oh, I can't sell these accounts. These guys count on me for a job. I'm telling you, the vast majority, they keep servicing those pools, and with under a new company, a different company. The service agreements are good. It's especially if you have a good one, especially if you do things like, I think Bryce has, as part of his service, several weeks of vacation where his homeowners know that, hey, I'm serving your pool for I don't know, 48 weeks a year, 50, 49 weeks a year. Awesome. That's for me, that's a selling point. That this person that's coming in the industry, because like was mentioned earlier, I do have a lot of new people coming in, and it's above 80% of in general, all the routes that I sell, about 80% are people coming into the industry and that we're introducing into the industry. So for me to have this thing of saying, look, these, this is smart, this route is set up smartly with smart policies, that's a selling, upsell. Price increases too. My vote is on the seller side. It's your business. Get your prices up. If you have room to raise your prices, you need to get it up. It's your business. Run it and make a profit. You deserve to make money on it. It does show better than having cheap rates, and being able to purchase at a discount. That's my call is if you have room to raise your rates, please do it. That way the customers are used to it. You've done the work, and you get to make extra money during while you're looking for a buyer, and they don't have, it's one less change when the buyer picks it up. And so it's easier for the homeowners to accept it.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely a lot easier when the prices were changed. And I think you mentioned this when we were talking about it yesterday, where if the seller does a price increase, 60 days later the customer doesn't remember it. But if the buyer does it in the first 60 days, they're going to lose, a lot of trust from their customers.
90 days. They're going to be like, what? And now we make this change and they come right in. I don't know who they are. And they raise my rates. You know what? I think we're going to have my nephew do it. What? Like,
Yeah,
it happens. So,
absolutely.
We have one question that it's probably a good time to ask, but how long should a standard guarantee be? 2 months, 6 months?
Well, let me jump in on that. Our standard is that this transition period is 90 days. And that gives time to get in there, make sure that, think of it, if you're coming in blue and blind, these are real accounts. These are decent. So you hit it, you're able to look at them and service them, but also go through and get paid by them. Customer that doesn't pay is a hobby. So that it gives you a chance to see the pools, get going, get trained, get paid, chase down Mrs. Smith who still can't figure out how to pay you, and be out. After 90 days, it's on you. These are this is your policies, your cleaning. This is, you're running a business now.
Yeah, and I would definitely agree that I wouldn't want to be on the offer side. I wouldn't want to offer a deal more than 90 days. And I also wouldn't accept a deal less than a 30-day guarantee, at any price.
Right. You got to make sure, because again, the payment thing, it's great. These are great people, but they need to pay you and get that going, that they're going to be a good paying customer.
Right. Yeah. So now we have a little example of a route acquisition calendar or calculator, excuse me, talking about just basically how to figure out what your return on investment might be if you were to make an investment into it. So the top half of that is talking about that section. So you would basically fill in, your route purchase price, what you're expecting to pay for the route, what the average monthly service revenue is. This would only be looking at that guaranteed revenue, just the service revenue that is expected from each of those customers, the number of customers, and then your typical profit margin. I kind of filled in some information here, and your profit margin might be different depending on where in the country you are and how you're running your business. So, do take a look at that information and plug in your own details. What that does is that it'll tell us what we're expecting to receive your monthly service profit. And then this number doesn't quite look right, but your expected repair revenue that you would expect from those. Or I guess that is probably right. It's revenue.
Mhm.
So, and this is definitely guesswork. You might, to put yourself on the safe end, put $0 there if you're not expecting any repair revenue. The reality for my business, it's usually close to about a 1-to-1 ratio, 50% repair revenue, 50% service revenue. So I usually will be a little bit conservative and put just a slightly lower number here. So instead of the 7,500, we did the 6,000. And then it's going to run through the same profit formula to tell you your current monthly profit that you would expect from this purchase that would add to it. And then it's dividing it out to see what your payback period is based off of that. So in this example, it would be about 12.3 months. And Chris, would that be something like that you would expect to see as a good ROI? A little over a year.
Yeah, it would work. It really, the key is what's going on with that. What's going on with that repair revenue number. And repair is repair is a bigger bucket. You know, there's more things going on in the backyard than just repairs. There's, you know, there's pieces and parts, there's referral for other work. There's, you know, find yourself a pressure washer that'll give you kickbacks. I mean, you are a backyard concierge if you run your business right. So there's money to be made there. And then likewise, you know, keep an eye, of course, on your profit numbers of that service profit is the real you know, the killer though is you all know is overhead. That's the silent killer. But you know, that's another talk. That's a whole other webinar is overhead. But yeah, that's, you know, these numbers they're good thinking points. It's a good no matter what, it's a great exercise to know
Yeah.
what that payback period, and especially the second calculator even more so.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I would say I always shoot for a payback period under 12 months. And typically, you know, the prices that I'm wanting to pay for an acquisition are going to be, you know, much lower than people who are coming in from outside of the industry. You know, I'm acquiring through relationships and other ways that, you know, that we work this out. So when I'm looking at my payback period, it's under 12 months and that's without repair revenue is what I'm looking for.
Right.
So almost half of what this one would be, but it's a whole different thing when you have an established business and relationships, obviously. The second part is what we were talking about earlier. You know, what is your advertising doing for acquisition? What's your cost or, you know, your acquisition by advertising? So if you again fill this out, we'll put in, you know, my budget about $1,000 a month to acquire new customers. Your average success rate. So that's not quotes that you do, that's customers who choose to sign up for your service. So if we had 10 that we added in a month and they were paying an average rate of $150, that would give us a revenue change of about $1,500, you know, the 10 times the 150. And then our cost per acquisition, which is, you know, we gained 10 for $1,000. So we paid $100 a pool through advertising. But after our typical profit margin, we only made $450 off of those pools that month. However, you take that amount and you multiply it out for the whole year to get what we call the ROAS, or your return on your ad spend, which is a ratio of money. And we have a 5.4. So for every dollar that we spend on advertising in a year, you net $5 in profitability with this calculator. And typically a 5 to a 10 range is what people like to see when they're doing advertising.
Right. And the important thing again about the exercise for just good business is knowing the cost to acquire a customer in general. It's just a tool in your toolbox, but by knowing, you're walking around town knowing, you know, it cost me $275 to whatever that number is to acquire everything in to get a new customer. It kind of opens up your mind about what you can do and what you're willing to do to pick, you know, to buy customers or to grow organically. You know, the other consideration about organic growth versus purchasing is that purchasing, you have a step growth. It's not just growing one at a time, you know, day after day or week after week. You are now bolting on to your route 50 new accounts. So if you have a new hire or you have find a route that has a tech and you can bolt that on, it's immediate. That cash is flowing right away and you can still grow organically. So, but you save all the time of growth.
Darren
Yeah.
Todd has a comment. He said it's a red flag when sellers say you can raise rates immediately, or there's a ton of repairs that need to be done that you can make money on.
Yeah, I mean the repair. I mean it's like a cliche response. I mean, not to say it's a cliche response, but it's, you're making conversation. They all say my route's super tight. You know, as someone in the industry, what's so good about your route? Well, it's super tight. Great, like everyone else's. But yeah, you can you can raise rates right away. Is a little bit like, oh gosh, how cheap are these things? But and especially after these past, like I said, these past 2 years where everyone's been on their back foot raising rates because there's stupid chemical costs. It's, you're chasing your tail. And, a lot of people think that asking to raise rates is like you have your hat in your hand and you're begging for it, but you're not. It's, here's the prices, here's what happened, here's what needs to happen.
And I will mention too, as part of
Mhm.
what we're going to send you after this webinar, we are going to include our price increase toolkit. We did a previous webinar on raising prices with everything you need to know about raising
Awesome.
prices, how to do it, how to communicate it. So definitely check
Right.
your email if that's a topic that you're interested in.
Awesome.
All right, let's talk about selling.
Yeah. So when we talk about selling, the first thing you really look at is the value considerations for your company or your route. There's different things that help you slide from what we call, the lower multiple, the lower end, like the 3 times, to help you push yourself up to getting a higher multiple, like the 12 times. The tight routes, like you said, Chris, like a true tight route, maybe measured in, single digit miles, right? If you have the historical data on the accounts, if you're, it looked like something like 90% of you guys are Skimmer users already. So you're going to have the historical data going back on as long as you've been servicing these pools. That's something that is valuable. That's going to help retain those customers. Clean books, making sure that all of your money is being collected and that your books are all set up correctly, that you have market rates. As Chris was talking about earlier, it's dangerous. It's more dangerous for a buyer to raise rates than it is for the seller. So the market rate the amount of money that the multiple will go up, as well as it's a higher rate that you're multiplying.
Right.
The company has a good culture. You're going to have good retention. Customer relationships, if the customers are happy with their service, they're not going anywhere, especially when you're going to be having the tech stay with the business. Any other value added services that you do, if you do things like tile cleaning or the pressure washing that you mentioned, different things like that. The timing in the economy, we all see it, the people who want to sell their business just before summer. I don't think that they do as well as the people who wait until the beginning of the year. Is that true, Chris? I'm just guessing.
No, in fact, it's I say there's no time in the market. The routes sell at any given time. August, the amount of people that buy routes in August is we always kind of look at each other, going, who really wants to buy in Phoenix and get going in Phoenix in August? But it's a busy time. The way I describe the timing is I have buyer leads decrease only when like the kids are going in and out of school. So beginning of summer, Christmas holidays, they're always looking and always around, but maybe they're just slowing down, not making life decisions at that time. But there's no timing when it's right for you, get it listed. Because on my side, as a broker, I need to find that one person that wants to be in your area and has that much money in their pocket, and we can sell them on why it's so great to be in the pool routes. And sometimes that takes a lot of time and sometimes it's a long time. We're not even able to, in a reasonable amount of time, to find that one person. um, so it just takes time. Don't try to time the market. The worst thing I get is the people are like, I gotta sell by January 1st because I'm moving to Montana. I'm like, boy, wish we were talking a couple months ago. I mean, we're gonna give it a shot, but don't call me when it's an emergency. Give yourself some time to get this done, and give it time on the market so we can find that right person. And you
I'm
don't get
glad.
stuck into what can we do? What can we do? Can we, do we lower price? Do we do this? What can we do? And the answer is get more time is the better answer.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here, because I definitely would have thought that the timing mattered a lot more. So that's interesting to hear.
Yeah, no, I mean, because we're really, like I said, it's that one person at that one time. So it's when are they ready and how do we find them?
Yeah. And then the last topic we already mentioned earlier was, at certain sizes, the EBITDA might be a factor. So you might be looking at the profitability of your company rather than the revenue at certain sizes. And, definitely worth looking at it at both ways to see which one might be better for you as a seller or as the buyer.
Right. And it's, you have to have some other plates spinning other than just service for, for really that EBITDA, which is really your cash flow, which is really how much cash is your business spitting off. Um, is how does that, when that number becomes more motivating than presenting it as a route with vehicles and trucks and whatever. Um, but we always look at it, on my side, we always look at things both ways to try to bring whatever brings the most value, whatever we can pack things up. It's it's the market policy. It's how much money, what's the greatest amount of money we can sell it for, in which a buyer says that's a great deal, I want to take it. So that's the point we're always chasing. Um,
Chris is gonna
and I
go for
think
the 12X, but Bryce, if he's buying, is probably gonna look for something that maybe costs less than 12X.
right. And
some
we don't, and
cases.
we're out there and we're like, these aren't emotionally priced folks. I mean, buyers, these aren't emotionally priced. These are assets that you're buying. These accounts that you're buying today, you're when it's time to sell in 20, 30 years, you can sell. Or when you grow and you've outstripped your own structures and you need to make some breathing room, you can sell off those accounts. There's value, inherent value in those accounts. And it really, the value, whether you're pricing it as a route or pricing it as a business, we always look at it both ways. Sometimes the route looks better, sometimes the business looks better.
We've got some great questions coming in, so I'm just gonna give my co-presenters here just a slight nudge to make sure that we have time to get through some of these great
Yes.
questions.
Sounds good. Just a few additional considerations. How do the rates compare with market value? Making sure that you're getting the good rates. Is the coverage area manageable? I always tell people that a 10-minute drive out of the way, it costs you 16 hours a year. That's a long time. So when Chris was talking about people driving 2 hours to get to different places, multiply that out, that's insane. And then the detailed service history is a huge edge on keeping customers happy. So I shop for Skimmer users. I like people who are using computer software where I know I'm going to be able to have access to that data. That's a big plus for me. I think you said the same thing, Chris.
Yeah, it's also something when we're going through it and we find a seller that's using Skimmer, we kind of beat the buyer over the head. You need to get a Skimmer account and keep this going on. You maintain that mode of operation on top of all the benefits of all the ways you look better than the guy in the beater truck that's trying to beat you on price.
Yeah.
Those guys are all gonna be out there, but they're not gonna be communicating like you do. They're not gonna be putting the same thing, and Skimmer puts all that information right in your hands. I mean, even
Correct. Once
silly
somebody
things.
gets, once somebody gets accustomed to getting service emails, it's hard to go back, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it
Yeah.
really is. So and I mean, even just the thing of something that's watching out for your filter changes.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
it's the amount of, and we talk to people where the amount of, if you all added up how many O-rings you didn't charge for in a year, you'd cry.
Yeah.
Because that's what these my customers, they're great, I love them, let me just go ahead and do that for you, let me just go ahead and do this for you, and all that adds up. And so sometimes skimmers and tracking it and those things help you kind of keep your edge, and always making sure you got money coming in to pay the rent.
We're not paying
Yeah.
Chris to say this, I promise. So let's talk about deal considerations, Bryce.
Yeah, just looking at the deal structure, like, are you going to have to pay 100% up front or taking an earn out? Are you buying the route, or are you buying a company, which would be things like the website, their advertising platform, their other assets, and what kind of financing is available for you? If the person's willing to do financing that you're buying from, or if you're able to get like those rare SBA loans. Chris is saying they're really rare for our industry. And then also, post transaction, what are you going to require from the buyer? Are they required to stick around? Are they prohibited from competing? Signing a non-compete or a non-solicitation, which I would definitely say you always do a non-solicitation. And then, the non-compete can definitely vary based on, you don't really want them to work in the same area when you're getting rid of them. It makes it a little easy for them to end up with triggering that non-solicitation, if they're running into their old customers.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And all our deals have the same thing is really that non-solicitation, or because it has teeth, defendable teeth. Non-competes, just so I don't know if you all know, but non-competes uh are can easily get thrown out if they're too strict. If they're
Hmm.
if they're too strict, they lose value very quickly. So by having a non-solicitation is very reasonable, and always have one in. It's fair to do that. I paid you good money for it. You need to lay off these folks. I need to be able to make all my money back.
Yeah, definitely. And then just lesson learned the hard way, how to value a pool route. I've definitely overpaid for pool routes in the past. You get sold on the blue sky, the people telling you there's lots of repair revenue, what they don't, that's available, without telling you that there's a reason. The customers aren't interested in doing repairs, or the pools are so neglected that the customers won't trust you when you start, having so many expenses for repairs that they never had to pay the last guy who wasn't doing repairs. Comparing the business plans and making sure that they line up, that the customers are quality customers. Again, actually seeing these homes and these customers that they're paying their bills, their pools are being well taken care of, and that your service levels are matching. How you're going to bill, what the customer expects for what they're paying for each of them, the service days that they're going to do, basically what all is included in the service rate that they're paying, making sure that those match up. That if you're a plus chems company, you don't want to buy a lot of pools that are chems included, or filter cleans, things like that, making sure that it's pretty similar to what you're already doing. And we're going to send all this stuff out to you all again too. I'm going through it a little quickly to make up for some of our time, but we will definitely send it to you. But things I wish I'd known before I sold my business, or purchased, making sure that the rates are set right on either side, the buyer or the seller. It's better to do it on the seller side. If you have to raise rates as the buyer, it's bad for your business. The seller, you stand to gain more from it. You're selling to the right person. It's never good when you make the sell to someone who's not going to be successful, or they don't really know what they're getting into. They end up depending on you a lot for the training, and you're trying to be moved out and done, but at the same time you want to make sure that they're successful so that your guarantee works out and your relationship with your customers isn't affected. And then also, is this a relationship or is this a single transaction? I definitely have sold or bought pools for more or less based on those types of things. If it's going to be an ongoing relationship, I might overpay for the pools, or sell them for cheap just to build that relationship, or to help one of my competitors move out of a certain area. I might encourage that, saying, let's do a lopsided trade where I'm going to take these pools from you that are in my area, and you're going to take these pools that are outside of my area, just to help them, get out of your area, basically.
Right.
And then a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about that makes your business more valuable is being able to do a good transition, having a warm handoff when you're doing it. So we do have a couple of form letters that I've used in the past with, a little bit of language changing. But how you communicate will definitely set you apart. Making sure you communicate in multiple ways: phone, email, text, to those new customers that you're acquiring, or the customers that you're trading off, so they know what's going on. They're not blindsided. Making sure you frame the transition in a way that's beneficial to them. So I always, when I buy, I'm always selling on the fact, of what our business is, what advantages we have. And then when I'm selling my business, I'm always selling on what they can do that I can't. Usually it has to do about they're more local, they'll be able to take care of them faster. And
Exactly.
then definitely expect some customer turnover. It's never 0%. I like to say it should be under 5% for sure. Between 3 to 5 is what I've kind of experienced as a good healthy transition. Sometimes people just don't like the handoff, and sometimes they just don't like you, or they were already leaving. These transition letters, I won't go through them just to save us the time, but you are going to be receiving these both for both sides. Something for the seller, something for the buyer. And just some key takeaways, Chris, if you got.
Quickly,
Sure.
Chris.
I got it. I got it. It was just, but also is selling a route and buying a route is not just the beginning of your business or the end of your business. Doesn't have to be. It can be part of the normal, the normal operating of selling accounts. Of I'm good at what I do, I grow, and selling off accounts can be a healthy way to pop some off and put $50,000 in the pool guy retirement fund. And I'm not saying, and I'm actually, the folks that build in order to sell end up doing it poorly, because they stop caring about the success of the buyer and that they're doing a good job, and so they end up being bad sellers, and we usually sniff them out and don't do business with the person that's trying to flip accounts. The build a business you sell, yeah, Skimmer does help you build a business you can sell, because it had just the data, the way how good you look to the customer. We really love the software, and it just makes it easy. Just it's easier to market when we're out there selling the upsides. But communication is the key. Just like we said, is talk to the homeowners, let them know, introduce people so it's not a shock and you're not ditching them. And then for using a broker, of course, the reach and we're experts in marketing and getting the message out, but also we're a buffer in the transaction. So sometimes we're hired just to be the buffer of keeping friends friends. Like, Chris, they let you say when your buddy wants to buy the business, someone you kind of know, talk to Chris. He's got all the information. Just go ahead, and I'm working with him, so just run through him, and that way you get to kind of pawn it off to us, and we get to manage the procedure. So it's a nice buffer to keep everyone at a friendly arm's length.
All right, we've got some questions here I want to get to. We got a good one from Justin, and super quick answers here because we do have the sneak peek on features I'd like to share. Justin asked, how often do you see routes being sold with owner financing?
I want to say owner financing is maybe 25% of the time. It's better to me, in short, my call, it's better than lowering your prices. Once you give away the price, it's gone. When you finance a piece of it, you at least able to maintain your selling price and have, and be able to collect on that money. But not a lot.
Brian asked, 3x to 12x is a very big range. What is a common range? I'm understanding there's a lot of variables. Real quick answer. I want to hear from both of you on this one.
For me, real quick, on, in our world, depending on on the market and everything, a seller can expect to sell for, 8 times to biggest bulk, 8 times to 12 times. You can push, or 8 to 10 is what the seller is going to net out most all the time. And then there's fringe on either side of that, depending on the business.
Yeah, I would say wholesale, I expect to pay 3 to 6 times in our local area in Phoenix, which is usually smaller packages.
Yeah.
Rick asked, how much more can you sell your company for versus just selling off pool customers as individual pools?
Actually, the sets, like actual routes, like subsets of routes, sometimes they go for a bigger value than selling the entire business. Depends on your business and how we can value that. And when we really dig in and dig into the financials, sometimes, and more than often than not, the routes are more valuable than the business.
Interesting.
Yeah, I would say, you're looking at valuing your assets, your name, things like that. I would say that typically that it's worth more money to buy a full business, but depending on, if it's me, I'm not interested in buying your business. I have my own. I don't want to buy your good name. I'm only going to buy your accounts. But if you're selling to someone outside of the industry, they might be interested in that. Might speed them up a little bit.
To tag on that is what's my name worth? What's my website worth? What's this worth? Used to be way more valuable 5 or more years ago. That value is getting less and less by the day. The longest term name, the good name, for whatever reason, people are becoming desensitized to good names. I mean, probably because every bank we have has changed names 6 times in the past 6 years. So people are used to name changes.
Right. Y'all, we have some really good questions in here. Unfortunately, we are out of time. So I want to just cover a couple things super quickly. If you are a Skimmer customer today and you're buying from a Skimmer customer, please call us. Not only can we help import the standard stuff, but we can also import some extra things like gate codes, customer notes, service rates, those types of things. If you are not buying routes from an existing Skimmer user, we can help you get the file formatted correctly and ready to import. And our success team can help you through that. Seriously, give us a call. We'll be happy to help. We've got dedicated resources to help you accomplish that. And next slide, you're interested in seeing what's coming up, here are just some of the great new features coming to you soon. We just launched quotes version 1. There's more to come on quotes. Service texting is coming super soon. So this will give you the ability to let your customers know if you're on the way, when you finish service, or if a stop had to be skipped. This has been a really highly requested feature. And so we're super excited to be bringing that to you in the very near future. We are also going to have new and improved QBO integration. So basically, you'll have more things that integrate between Skimmer and QBO that today we don't have. So all the way down to refunds, taxes, your payouts, getting a lot more granular data synchronization. Credits for customer accounts. Some of you may have customers that maybe leaving the country or leaving town, or they're snowbirds and they want to pay in advance. You'll be able to collect that payment through Skimmer billing and be able to apply it to future and or past invoices. We'll have automatic invoices. So you'll be able to set schedules with Skimmer billing to automatically generate and send invoices for the recurring services. And we will finally be adding readings and dosages to work orders, another highly requested feature, especially for folks who do things like pull openings and pull closings and other types of seasonal services. So that's just a quick preview. If you are not using Skimmer, please give us a shot. We have, again, nearly 30,000 people using our platform. We have a great new billing platform where you can put all your customers on auto pay and never have to deal with checks again. We've got more features coming. We have an amazing support team. And if you want to try it and you don't like it, we'll give you your money back in the first 30 days. No questions asked. Just call us or email us and we will refund you. We are here to help you be successful, and we win when you win. So thank you all for joining us. For those of you who have Q&A questions, we will stick around and make sure we get those answered and get back to you on those responses. I see a lot of questions about just 8 times valuation questions, mostly. And so we will get back to you on all of those. We've got some folks here that will get those answered. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Thank you, Chris, for joining us. Thank you, Bryce, as always. And we hope to see you at the next one. Everybody say bye.
Thank you.